Turns out he's a major cinephile. They don't watch enough movies! It's a very simple formula! And here we go. Welcome, come one and come all, and all that. Today, or the first day this is releasing, is February 12th, just a few days before an awful holiday. If you're in a relationship of any kind, this probably isn't as bad. But single quarantine life people, this is a rubbish, bloody awful time to be alive. Dating apps are brutal. I am once again taking a little breather off them. But if someone wants to have a virtual Valentine's Day, hit me up on TikTok. That is me and my best shooting my shot, or whatnot. But barring a true Disney miracle, this episode is for the rest of us. Call it a anti-Valentine's Day survival guide. Movies for all types who can't watch Love Actually again a few months post-December, or whatever people consider romantic comedies or just romantic movies these days. Scary movies, gory movies, and one movie that transcends everything. That is what we are here to give you today. The best movie for anyone, no matter what, is that last one that really transcends the rest of the list. The true meaning of the survival guide of Valentine's Day. Joy or Sandy, you are in. Whatever you're feeling, this is the list for you, and that last movie is the real creme de la creme, the cream of the crop for you. So grab that XL bottle of Barefoot, your combo Reese's Kit Kat Valentine's Day, dark chocolate if possible, heart-shaped assortment, some cookie dough bites, trying to get that sponsor, still fingers crossed, and or your favorite flavor of non-dairy dessert product, Cotto. The other one we're trying to get sponsored, just Cotto, cookie dough bites, and, maybe some Vita Coco. Let me know. We're pretty bigly on on TikTok and, trying here in the podcast game. So I'm waiting. I'm ready to do some business. But let's avoid your feels. Grab your favorite, whatever you need, comfort food. And for the remainder of this podcast, we're going to help you get through this garbage holiday. Back to the health and wellness section of Apple Podcasts we go. New thing for this episode is letting you know where you can watch these. I feel like it's needed for this list with how crucial and important the content of this episode is. It may even be the most important thing for your well-being come this weekend. So My Bloody Valentine, the 1981 version, is available on Amazon Prime. And all of these are at least free with a subscription to a streaming service. This is a classic cheesy oldie slasher movie that almost assuredly has no supernatural elements in its time. I'm sure it was scary back then. Nowadays, it's just a classic 80s fun, all the elements you would want. The sensual teasing of romance in a mine. It's hilarious and over the top, as only this time period did its best for the slasher genre. I know, none of these actors, at all. And like my coworker said recently when talking about a different show on Amazon Prime, I think it was Hana, or something like that, with Joel Kinnaman, and whoever the lead with him was in, it was an AMC show. It was like a cop thing. It's eluding me. It's not the killing. Because it's not the following, it's the killing, I'm pretty sure. Any hoodles, sometimes you don't need to have that know of who everyone is. You don't always need to know, oh, there's Ryan Reynolds, there's someone else. These are just characters in a show or a movie, and that's sure what it feels like watching this movie. I quite liked Haunting of Hill House for its, group of actors that I didn't really have an immediate familiarity with, or a constant, oh, that's the person I know can list off 10 other things in their repertoire. Here I know no one, and mostly none of these actors have something bigger on their IMDb pages, excluding this movie, of course. In another mining town, I know with Sabrina, it feels like a big trend that I'm used to. Also, the writing here is simply spectacular. These jokes are like dumb and amazing in all the right ways. It feels like every Friday the 13th group of guys you've seen in any of these slasher movies, but that movie did quite well with their group of random teens in an 80s movie. Think of this as Footloose is a good way to describe what's going on in this town. But instead of dancing, they don't allow Valentine's Day. For us in our feels, amazing. even if the town is named Valentine's Bluff. We join these Canadians on their attempt to bring the town back to the holiday, but it can't be good knowing that in the past there was a miner-themed serial killer when the town let some miners die because they were all trying to get that hanky-panky on. They are tempting fate. For 80s movies, the gore here is pretty good special effects and all that. So here, just don't celebrate Valentine's Day, and you're all golden in Valentine's Bluff, so something we can all relate to. And just speaking of some of these fantastic dialogue script choices, here's one I got for you. You know what would look really good on you? Me. Followed by the comeback, suck it and zip it up. Also, you're supposed to be decorating the room, not each other. The one-liners, stupendous. And they even have fun foreshadowing of talking about Valentine's Day plans of saying, I may not even make it out alive. It's so good. Also, having recently shaved my glorious beard, masks and all that, it's tough to have all the facial hair under that. Keith Knight has the most sensational mustache. I don't really care for any of these characters, but it's an absolute blast watching this ensemble exist together and have fun together. But that mustache is something to behold, and fingers crossed facial hair Nick will be back at it soon enough. This movie isn't a cinematic masterpiece, but for a hilariously small niche slasher, it's sensational. I love that cheddar, the seasonal horror movie. For a time that I rarely liked, it just hits different in the best way possible. See, I'm still up to what the kids are talking about. You know? Also, honest question, do people actually like Valentine's Day specific candy? Or do people just like the excuse to eat candy? What is the real difference between a Reese's Heart, Egg, Trees, and the OG ones? Nothing. Eat Reese's or Reese's Puff cereal whenever you like. Live your life if you want to. It may not be great calorically, but it probably will make you feel good. So take your pick. And you can live a little bit on this brutal of holidays, that's for sure. And in the theme of the movie, it really goes all in. Having Valentine's Day love poems become serial killer messages, the best you could hope for. Also, while this bartender is not crazy Ralph fun, because no one can be, right? He is pretty good while still here. He has this prank, right, where he's going to put a guy who looks like the miner, and it's going to open the door and it'll swing out. Great prank, and it becomes a kill. He's so excited with his work, and it doesn't. The last one, of course, is the guy as he keeps tempting fate by opening the door more and more times. The weird part of this movie is, why do the killers kill those trying to keep their legacy alive, or any movies like this? The whole imitation is flattery thing, among more. I know the one Halloween gave the one guy the knife and a mask to try to pass off Michael Myers when he killed Jamie Lee Curtis's character on camera this time at the institution she was at. And he kind of used that as a smart passing off his thing. So it's always a guessing game, right? How your serial killer is going to react to those around them. Some of the kills here, pretty good overall. One of the most memorable has to be the low budget version. Yes, it happened here first, but still, of the liquid nitrogen face kill in Jason Goes Off to Space, Jason X. Here it is a boiling hot dog water facial. The kills are actually pretty creative and good here. They use the holiday and mine settings very well. The kills here at times were super gory and violent. They did have to trim some stuff out for censoring when it first came out, but even seeing the full uncut scenes on YouTube, those extra moments would have been amazing. And just last year they released a special version with all those juicy extras put back in. No, Lord of the Rings extended cut or, super long Watchmen, but at least it gets some good stuff and adds probably equivalent to maybe a slightly less degree, but pretty close to the R-rated The Wolverine. Once they are in the actual mine, I feel like things drop off a bit. The surprise is pretty good, as we know the killer is probably not Harry Warden, and I guess you figured it was one of the two guys left, and when one of the two supposedly dies, I think it has to be kind of obvious. Joke's on us, red herrings aplenty. The local boy who never left was scarred as a kid and became the new killer. Also, the end song for the credits is bomb. It's like an old Western campfire song. The Ballad of Harry Warden for sure slaps. Part of the allowance of these more gruesome scenes was in part to the 2009 remake reboot of My Bloody Valentine in 3D, which is available on HBO Max. Definitely not a sequel. Can't say I know a ton of the actors here either, but when I do eventually watch Supernatural, I will have seen and can say I've seen both actors in reboots of other things. Jared Padalecki had the 2009 Friday the 13th. Jensen Ackles has My Bloody Valentine in 3D. Neither became a long-standing franchise, but Padalecki has a Texas Walker Ranger thing on the CW, and Ackles will be in season 3 of The Boys. Maybe short-lived, not unlike the time spent with Shawn Ashmore. But either way, the show and new episodes can't come soon enough to Amazon Prime. I'm not gonna lie, the intro to My Bloody Valentine 3D in the style of crazy mid-2000s over-the-top 3D newspaper animations, not unlike something from one of the later Harry Potter movies, has me wanting more pictures of the Spider-Mans. It's goofy and strange, not in a good way. I just want to get my J. Jonah Jameson person out there to get ready for that brand new, who knows how many Spider-Mans is going to be in the Marvel Spider-Man 3 version. I've heard some rumors from Tom Holland that I guess Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield aren't going to be in it, but we all know he's terrible at keeping secrets, and that's maybe an indication for us to for sure know they are going to be in there. Can't wait for our live-action Spider-Verse, still assuming it's going to happen. I swear things get more exciting here. But what a rubbish start to a gory fun time. A treat so good you can wrap it up in a heart-shaped box and get down with it, or with your bad self. Happy Valentine's Day, indeed. So the gore here is fire and good. Bodies are split up. Holes in chests are reminiscent of the best of the Alien movies, which we all know as Aliens, followed by Alien and nothing else in the franchise. This is to be expected, since special effects on what audiences will tolerate evolves in 30 years' time. There's one issue with these movies. Modern horror remakes always lack the fun, cheesy charm of the classics, especially in the dialogue. It's a trade-off. You get crazy, gratuitous violence, and things become grittier and darker. And the jokes and sensualism, it's all trying to be cool and edgy. I don't mind the Friday the 13th remake, but I know for a fact it's not my favorite of those films. In fact, you remember from my episode, or if you haven't checked it out, of that franchise, and I had it at 9th of 12. Fine and watchable, but the best of the worst of them, you would say. The best of the rest. Somehow the Halloween film doesn't fall into the same trap with their remakes, partly because they are sequels and Laurie Strode is played by Jamie Lee Curtis, back from the dead for the second time. Both look and dialogue. It reminds me of that 2009 Friday the 13th film. Thankfully, it doesn't look as bad as you know what duology. For those new listeners, I refer, of course, to the garbage Rob Zombie spewed out on those films that will forever stain the legacy of the Halloween movies. Maybe not as much as the Halloween Without Michael Myers movie, but you get it. It's pretty bad. They crushed the first 3D joke of an eye popping out because of an axe. Holy hell, that was amazing and everything I could have hoped for. Sensational. This is a stream of conscious excerpt, just so you guys know, for this specific one, as the only movie on this list I have not seen before. The kills and action were amazing and I laughed so much. There was a shovel through the mouth cutting a head off. I've never seen something like that. Simply spectacular. Sadly, the name of the town is not Valentine's Bluff, and instead just Harmony. It's also less Valentine specific, or explained as much as the prior entry, the original source material. I can already see, not too far into the movie, the issue that you'd have with this movie. The kills, sensational. The writing, generic but not funny. And at times just over-the-top edgy, for no other reason than it can be. Why not? And the amount of 3D usage here, it's just too much. Throwing a pickaxe, just so much stuff. Oh, it's coming at you. Watch out in 3D. It's just painful and less fun and quirky, and it just kind of comes off tired. The biggest thing I get out of this is seeing the similar story beats from the original one and just how they were all slightly tweaked and adapted. I don't know how I feel about this movie, trying hard to make everyone think that the one actor I know, clearly the main character, is the main guy. There's no way. I'm reading this now knowing that it is. In my mind watching this, there was no way he was a new killer. You know, maybe it could have been Harry Warden. We saw him get shot but never die. The last movie he did die. I just have so many questions about what to think in this one. What if the sheriff is the killer? The romantic rival who was last time, it clearly isn't him, But unless it's two killers, like after Scream and the following, anything is possible. And they mess with your head so much about who it could be. And you figure it has to be one of these two guys. And the Harry Warden thing seems pretty unlikely. And trying to think it could be anyone else would be hilarious. There's no way. But, for being a bit generic at times, I find myself laughing through this movie. More so than I have in a while, ages. But for our purposes, this movie barely resembles the clear Valentine's or anti-Valentine's themes and setting of the previous film. It feels more of a killer's calling card than a fleshed out reason and example. How did the 80s version feel more in tune with the theme instead of the one that came out only 11 years ago? Also, with about 30 minutes there's, at my, once again, playing games of there's no way the sheriff did it. You're always guessing, even with most of the movie behind you. They have that whole thing of appearing somewhere where it kind of makes sense for you to be there, but you really have no business being there. And then there's a part where his little flashlight thing looks like what the killer does with the pickaxe flip. Oh my gosh, I was really going to praise them for having good kills here. They doubled down on the dryer kill from the previous movie, and they ripped a guy's jaw off with a pickaxe, which, while cool to see it right up until the moment where it's not there anymore, the gore and CGI blood in that scene was inexcusably bad. Like as bad as anything from one of those motion capture games from the 90s, like the time Jeff Goldblumed his way through a Dracula role in a Goosebumps game, Dracul. If you didn't know about that gem, seeing him ham it up was something I did immediately once I thought about it and had that moment watching this. It might be the best thing to pick you up from any sort of seasonal blues. If you look up Jeff Goldblum as Dracula in a video game, you'll find something on YouTube. But by the end of it, I was jumping like crazy thinking, who could the killer be? And I was faked out beyond belief. It was the one actor I knew, and probably most people knew watching this movie. Somehow, he thought he was a killer and did all the killings with a second identity personality. And he survived a direct explosion somehow, too. So go figure. And, they got to set up that there's a sequel if there would have been a sequel. Also, last fun fact, the sheriff here was the jock in the first Final Destination. So how about that? And Darwin from X-Men First Class, who was unceremoniously turned aside in that movie and killed off, is in there a bit too. They try to tease him as the killer for a little bit, but there's a 0 chance it's him. We're all thinking X-Men after the last WandaVision explosive episode 5 ending, so can't wait to see how that gets continued and explained and developed through the last few episodes of it. When this episode drops, by the time you listen to it, I probably will have already watched the next WandaVision. I'm going to try to really early morning this one. So this may not be essential viewing for Valentine's Day like the first one, but is a fun enough slasher movie, and while not essential, it's fine for something a bit different. So our third movie, contrary to what you might think, it's not a third remake of My Bloody Valentine, I swear. Instead, we go to the directorial debut of Jordan Peele, the sketch comedy genius and the voice of one of the best Big Mouth characters in Duke Ellington. I refer, of course, to Get Out, which is available with commercials on demand on FX Now, which is a Roku thing you can get. I'm sure it's Fire Stick or whatever other versions as well. I don't think Uswood works the same way for anti-Valentine's Day movies, but Get Out is not only great for this theme, it's just great altogether as a scary movie and a movie as a whole. Doesn't have to be scary, just a good movie. The film stars Daniel Kaluuya, who also had a prominent role a year later in the smash Marvel hit Black Panther, and he'll be starring in the new film Judas and the Black Messiah, which drops today actually, so check that out. Both films also have Lil Rel Howery, who shines in the comedic relief role here, who also had his own sitcom for a year, but also, for me, came to the forefront with both Bird Box and Uncle Drew, an actor whose stock is clearly on the rise. I also lastly want to talk on Bradley Whitford. I have not seen West Wing yet, I know, and my first intro to him was actually this show, The Good Guys on Fox with Colin Hanks, which was my first foray to him as well, where he was hilarious as a 80s style cop living in a modern world. In general, I feel like I like him in everything he's in, including The Cabin in the Woods, Saving Mr. Banks, and when I eventually come back to Handmaid's Tale, I'm sure he's crushing it in that show as well. So to the movie, it obviously has some great commentary on society, issues in society, and it has the darkest humor. A messed up movie that makes you think, and not think too hard about love and V-Day, thankfully. Best to occupy your time with something scary and thought-provoking anyway. And this movie is scary, but not in the way you might normally think. This isn't Dracula stalking the countryside or a hockey mask killer running around a specific camp or lake killing teens, smoking a reefer and doing the premarital dirty. This is the kind of horror that ties itself, it's intertwined so tightly and well done to the real world and the realism. It makes it scarier, since even as crazy and over the top as the how it happens, the whole thing is a bit too real and believable that it maybe something like this is happening. We hope not, and we don't think so, but it doesn't feel so unrealistic. And that is why not only does it stand out so well, but also makes the points and stances it goes out to do, because it speaks to a level of horror or scares some of us have never had to live or go through on a regular bias, but some of us surely have. Unlike Us, while more traditionally scary, Get Out sets to make the scares feel as realistic as possible, not unlike American Horror Story Cult. In the political aspects of fear-mongering, societal justice and politics are a great add to the horror genre, and while ghost and monster stories will always have a place on the horror pantheon and may have the OG status as well, the realism this new breed of horror brings, it just hits a little different. See, I'm still young and hip like the kids say. The start of the movie, it immediately hits you with all of the things and fears of a black man walking through a suburb and trying as hard as he can to avoid any sort of confrontation, and no matter what he does, he still gets taken. Like, fuck, that is some scary shit right there. As you probably know by now, I love slow burns, especially in this genre, and gradually they ratchet up the unease and tension, and it just makes you feel a certain kind of way of uncomfortable, just waiting for something to happen. And this movie starts off with a bang and just makes things a bit cringe and strange for you, and just waiting for things to happen. That's how you feel going into it. They have such a way here of having these musical moments to let you know things are going on beneath the surface. They would be no way to know what is happening until it happens. But like I've said before in here, watching a horror movie the first time is great for the shock factor and everything else. But the second time through, it's almost always better. And yes, it was my second time watching this particular movie. When you watch it again, any movie again, but especially horror movies, you get to see not only the subtle hints you missed the first time around, but seeing the buildup of the unassuming character and wondering how you didn't see it coming before. And before I get into more, what's the actual movie is? What's the plot? What's the summary for the uninitiated? In short, it's a movie about a couple going to visit her parents for the weekend. He is black, she and her family are white. Past that, there's not a whole lot more to the actual setup and what happens in the movie. But beneath the surface, this movie is littered with subtext and subtle scares, and I am here for all of it. The jump scares are conservatively used, and the hints of what is going to happen is all there for you. It's sensational. This came out in 2017 and it reminds me, looking back at it, of Ready or Not, with its strange family ritual hunting movie, and I for sure thought Black Box was a strange, similar film with all of its psychological focus, and it being made by the same folks at Blumhouse 3 years later for the Amazon Prime Welcome to the Blumhouse Part 1 Marathon. We dove way back into Season 1 of our show. But once we get through the psychology hypnosis scene, diving deep into trauma as only the best of the horror movies can do, that is where I think you as a viewer, you always knew, but at that moment, you know something is super off with the family. Maybe their daughter's okay, but no way do you trust this family at all. But the biggest thing here is our first introduction to the aptly named sunken place, the metaphor for cultural appropriation and social hierarchies. And like you clearly see in the beginning, kidnapping and putting people into actual slavery is clearly a theme here. Like that season of American Horror Story, this movie and that season of TV became more and more terrifying, especially with the year or years we've been going through. What is the saying? Life imitates art, or art imitates life? I will leave that philosophical question for you to ponder. Let me know what you think on social at either Knickknack I See or Knickknack Movies. There may be some veiled microaggressions and stereotyping throughout. The whole point of this movie is to fight those moments and show them head on for the world to see, facing them as soon as they come to you. But seeing the picnic gathering as a whole, getting to know, seeming at first like microaggressions, and second, just knowing that everyone is asking these questions, question you would never ask someone, but now knowing the whole reason they're asking is if he can play golf, how physically fit is he, and his eye for photography. Because the whole ploy, plan, scheme, whatever you want to call it messed up. That's what I call it. In this movie, they are auctioning off bodies, sending their minds to the sunken place and giving people those bodies and putting those brains in them. Holy hell, right? And things are a bit crazy, obviously. But remember, this is a metaphor. When Mr. Armitage talks about how his dad never got over losing to Jesse Owens, that night you see the groundskeeper running like crazy. Coincidence? Hell no, this isn't a coincidence. And the veiled language, hearing the foreshadowing of the basement being sealed off because of black mold. Well, guess what? In the basement, mad science laboratory, they're using their bodies as black molds for their future bodies. I knew that line meant something, and I finally just got that down like on my second watch through. How can you think about being hopelessly single when you're constantly trying to figure and find out every subtle reference or hint what's to come? You just won't have the time this February 14th. This sad Sunday can become a scary, suspenseful Sunday at the stay-at-home cinema. While Lil Rel is seen as comic relief, and he kills every scene he's in that regard, he's actually a modern take, I think, that I've not seen before on the Doomsayer character. Not unlike the Best to Do It Crazy Ralph. Here, his intelligence as to what is going on, or his clear early advice to leave and have never gone, is hidden by how everyone takes him as a joke, looks down on him, but he clearly becomes incredibly important as the story goes. He might be the most important character to fixing the whole issue or conflict that happens in our plot. Besides the literal get out part, it's crazy that an hour into this movie, you might still call it a slow burn. But while the audience can forgive some things as awkward, uncomfortable microaggressions or weird white people, but between the clear auction, his phone dying, constantly being unplugged every time he goes to check it, and of course add this all up with the sunken place, and that reveal of his girlfriend being in on it, there's no way with her dating photos of the housekeeper, the groundskeeper, she's brought all these guys in, you'd have to do some mental gymnastics to think her parents hypnotized her as well. Get Out is a movie that scares you and makes you uncomfortable in the best and most thought-provoking ways. It's a movie that, and I don't say this lightly, everyone should watch. Yes, it gets a bit gory at the end, but how is it any worse than most things that come out in theaters nowadays anyway? Or, at home in theaters, not real theaters, because we're not going to theaters anymore for a while, but hopefully that comes soon. But gore in film and TV, especially American media, has been a thing for ages. And if you can watch something that has this a bit, but has so much beneath the surface that we can all get out of, you simply have to, if you haven't already. And yes, for the horror fans among us, you listeners, when it does happen, it really happens in spades, in the best possible way. The kills happen like crazy in quick succession, and they all just feel amazing. And man, do you want Chris to win and take everybody out. The brother with the sports ball, followed by some fighting, something they both talked about early in the movie, the dad with the dead deer head, something he hunts himself and despises. He takes the entire family out, well, almost everyone, with a little help from Lil Rel, and she finds a way to use her white privilege to almost get out of it and live another day. But Lil Rel comes and saves the day, taking our surviving final boy, once again rare in this genre, and she does not get saved by the police. But it is the best part of the movie where Lil Rel proves that the Doomsayer can actually be right every once in a while. Also, the Fruit Loop scene of individually eating them with milk in a separate glass. Man, that's creepy. Not that I eat cereal a whole lot. Reese's Puffs sometimes, but really try to avoid that, and Count Chocula a few times. But it's seasonal, but really try to not eat cereal. But you can't trust anyone who eats like that, especially not after this movie. So never date anyone ever, but instead listen to and value your close personal friendships and respect your TSA agents, always. So get to watching, you love sick, or more so sick of love folks. Next is something a bit more light. And I think if you're marathoning these movies, this next one is the one you have to finish up with. So at last we've come to the grand finale of all these films. The one that rags on love and everything Valentine's Day stands for. But it's not a scary movie at all. Forgetting Sarah Marshall, which is available on Peacock TV, and I did watch Get Out with commercials, still haven't paid for Peacock TV yet, so I own this one. And obviously I'm going to watch the extended edition DVD. So yeah, get on my level, bro, or grow. You know, the contraction of girl and bro, grow. This movie is a piece de resistance. It tackles heartbreak and romance woes, but it is so funny and has so many amazing actors. And it's not so much of a downer, unlike 500 Days of Summer. Jason Segel from the now on Hulu One Season Wonder Freaks and Geeks. I know, I am speechless. When we did the One Hit Wonder episode, it was impossible to stream this anywhere, but now you can and should get into this life-changing show with unbelievable talent at the beginning of all their careers. In this movie, joining him are Mila Kunis, Bill Hader, Kristen Bell, Jack McBrayer, Paul Rudd, and Jonah Hill. They're all sensational in this movie. This list is massive, and they all are amazing together, even if their roles are small. Paul Rudd is barely in this, but he kills it on screen when he's there. And of course, let's not forget Russell Brand. This is technically the first of two movies focusing, he's not the main focus here, but focused on him and his rock star character Aldous Snow from the band Infant Sorrow, and is still loved when any of his songs come on my iPhone carpool karaoke playlist. And in general, I just like him ever since I was on his talk show for One Cold Open on Brand X. If you don't believe me, take a deep dive into my TikTok. The proof you seek is right there for you to appreciate and adore. Before the show, he called me a cartoon character, and during the show, he took a selfie of my chest, unbuttoned my vest. Yes, it was 2013 after all. Vests were, I guess, still a thing. And he tweeted it. Most of this is in that TikTok. And that was where I think I peaked. I'm pretty sure there's no higher part of my life can go from there. But to the movie at hand. If you have not seen it yet, I can't imagine there are many of you out there who haven't. This is a tale as old as time. Segel is a music composer for a TV show that his girlfriend is the lead actress on. The movie starts off highlighting all the cute coupley things in their apartment. You can kind of see he's become very comfortable and maybe complacent in this relationship. Seeing it even more publicly on display, you know, his dating life is front center in media coverage on, I think it's Hollywood Extra, because of his, more so her celebrity status. Not unlike a horror movie, seeing him so comfortable but knowing he's going to be immediately broken up with. If you have this happen before, you know. Parts of this are brutal, and watching again, it's better, but also worse going into it. Bill Hader actually provides some amazing advice, like focusing on a personal hobby after any sudden change. Don't we love him in everything he's in? I sure do. And that's early on. You might just stop the movie right there. Don't, but you could and just run with that. There are so many moments here that are amazing and too real and relatable. Like focusing on all the good parts of a relationship instead of focusing on what it was, its whole sum of it. Finding a way to feel better. In his case, fucking everything and anything. And yes, it does affect his work, to be expected. The crazy thing here is while all these things are real life experiences and all that, the over-the-top nature of them, it helps it all a bit be a little more digestible. Not just, you know, sad and depressing like 500 Days can be. But you can laugh through the pain. Isn't that better? That's the whole point here, right? So we set off on a fun-filled trip in Hawaii, and we meet Mila Kunis, who every time I see her, I wonder long and hard how she continues to be in Family Guy as the butt of the show's entire joke. Meg is a great part of the show, but I wonder every time how we got to her voicing this character and continuing to do so. When you are healing and getting over someone, you see them everywhere. Even if they aren't there, you still see them. But like only this movie can do. Belle's celebrity status and her seeming official endorsement of the flight. She did say Hawaii was a place she vacations. It's all in his face. And this leads to the most obvious coping technique. Drinking your sorrows away and numbing the pain. Even though I am not really drinking right here, the fun drink orderer in me loves the wild drink he gets in Hawaii. If you are up for an adventure, please check out this bold strategy. Once bars are things and safe and all that again, just order a surprise cocktail. It's the spice of life, and you may not always get the best drink in the world, but you'll discover some amazing ones in the process. If a forest of fruit isn't growing out of my drink, is it even worth a drink? Does it even count as a drink? Food for thought. More like drink for thought, but The more I watch this, I see all those things brought back up again, for better or worse, comparing yourself to others. Man, that is one I really gotta work on. This movie is another free, depending on how you rent or view it, therapy session. You get a few of those from me. Besides movies and TVs, we here at Nick Nack Goes to the Movies love to dole out life advice and hope to continue the meteoric rise up on the health and wellness charts of Apple Podcasts. If there's one thing to know here, the most important life lesson of all, no matter what gender or sexual identity you are, you can always get a good cry out, and it'll normally be pretty helpful. Just throwing that out there. Also, unrelated to that, but just a weird fun fact, Paul Rudd is 51 years old these days. Somehow he looks exactly the same in 2008. He just doesn't age. It's a modern marvel and mystery, but his scenes and this movie overall, littered with good advice in every moment. Someone should do a real dissertation on all the healthy moments here. You can't help but feel seen watching this movie. There are so many moments here that just make you laugh through the pain, and they're real life moments, like a fair amount of the Judd Apatow movies before it. And to a more recent media outlet, Big Mouth. There are just so many plot things out here that I could talk on, but more important here is the message of this movie. This is the Valentine's Day movie as Elf is to a Christmas movie. There's nothing else that can compare. Nothing. Change my mind. Good luck. Try. As one thing in this movie that I will never get past, not as scary as, Spiders of Biggest Houses, the scariest of all the things. But right before I started college, I had a bit of a heights accident. Almost dying, falling off a gorge instead of jumping, slipping, and hitting a rock wall and a tree before eventually hitting the water. I think I'm fine still, as far as I can tell. Maybe that's where my back pain issues live, or I still have a little indent in my leg, but seemingly the indent in my leg is the only thing that lasted and came from it, right? This was one of the scariest non-emotion based things I ever went through. And this movie oddly recreates that moment to a T, but a little less graphic. I love how flawed every character is to a point. It really is refreshing to see that no one has their shit together. And the most this happens, easily if not only Seagal's growth, going from doom and gloom to anger and trying to feel anything, trying to feel nothing, and when it finally seems to click, yes, he just met Kunis, but the whole outlook and happiness is derived from someone else. And when his ex comes back into the picture and she wants to do the dirty and get back together, all he has is this epiphany that ain't it. But it takes some physical intimacy with that ex to come to that realization. He ruins everything with Kunis and his stint with Belle. It all doesn't work out long term. It feels like a downer ending. It's not the true end, but it feels like the end is going to be a bit of a bummer. It just goes to show how messy life and things are overall. Something we can all relate to, especially now. Most importantly, as only this movie can do, the permission to cry is important, but even more important is the notion to give yourself some time. You sometimes need to just be single to figure shit out. Grieve the loss in your life, which this is you've lost thing. It's like a death. Grieve it. Take its time. And take some time yourself to rediscover who you truly are and really just learn to be happy with yourself. I mean, if I'm reading this stuff correctly, which I wrote and took notes on, this is like a slap in the face. Oh gosh, this movie does bad things, but good things to you in the long run. But no matter what, you gotta find some passion project, something that makes you happy. For me, it was losing mad weight. Gotta work on that toning now. If anyone has any advice, let me know. And of course, this podcast, this thing you're listening to right now, is my attempt to feel better and do something for me that hopefully you'll enjoy. Like and subscribe, follow, and follow my social medias and stuff too. But maybe just enjoy it as well. Also, thank goodness we got at least a scene from this teased Dracula musical. Yes, it was a comedy to most, but to him it was a beautiful passion project. And eventually, someone telling him it was a comedy did help make it that way a little bit as well. And we get Bill Hader to sing in the end and go all out. Worth it for the whole thing, just the price of admission on that alone. This movie does a great over-the-top trek through the 5 stages of grief. And by the end of it, not unrealistically, things are better, but it's not clear-cut as a happy ever after either. Thankfully, there is hope though. The end leaves our 2 leads off to a hopeful future, and that's the best realistic end any of us sad single folk can hope for. Damn, what an episode, right? thanks for being on this longer journey. I think it's longer. We'll see what it looks like when I end up slicing and dicing it a little bit. Before I do end the show, I want to give a small shout out to 500 Days of Summer here and a few other viewing options that didn't make the first version of this, but we're going to make more, don't worry. 500 Days of Summer was one of the 3 movies I owned in college that were great for like movie nights when I was trying to impress a girl with not every action type of superhero movie. Back then it was mostly X-Men, Tarantino, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, and The Matrix. Well, I guess Harry Potter, but pretty much everyone likes Harry Potter. But mostly it was Forgetting Sarah Marshall, Across the Universe, and 500 Days of Summer. I thought about including 500 Days on here. Part of me didn't really want to watch it or include it in this list yet. That movie is the equivalent of a Scared Straight program or a wake-up call. You need it, and it's good for that, but I made this list as more avoidance and focusing on other things instead. That movie has some lovely life lessons for breakup things in general, and it's more of a realistic end as opposed to a happy end, which the movie does warn you pretty early on it's not a love movie. So you can totally watch it. But this Valentine's Day, with everything else going on that's awful in the world, take some time to be gentle and kind to yourself. You need to open the floodgates this year. If you want to go in the opposite direction, there is also the Kill Bill duology available on HBO Max. Revenge stories are Tarantino's bag, and while these two never did it for me quite as well as Django and Inglourious, they are 2 amazing anti-love revenge movies if you want some true gore. I really did think about adding those as well, but this episode would have been crazy long with 2 more movies to boot at a minimum. And like I said, there's always next year where, barring something crazy like me being in a relationship, crazy I know, there's always the next version of this episode. The Valentine's Day survival guide will have a few iterations, you would think. Same time, same thing next year. Also, small shout to the Big Mouth Valentine's Day special, which is very anti-Valentine's Day and kicks off with a great song to listen to through all your fun travels that day, whether you're getting COVID tested or grocery shopping or who knows what. Also, I have to mention Bob's Burgers. They don't just do Thanksgiving episodes great. The songs there are great, and they kill it on every holiday episode. This is no exception. Be it Netflix or Hulu, there is some animation that can get you through this day for a whole marathon as well. Or do both. Live your life on this special day. We're going to take it back. We're going to make it special for you, right? The whole Galentine's Day. I don't know if there's a Bro-entine's Day, but maybe there's, we'll go that route, right? So what is your favorite fix to get through this lousy, loathsome day? Let me know on both Twitter, Instagram at knickknackmovies or knickknack_IC. But while it's not fully over yet, also one more thing. As we talked about WandaVision briefly, maybe that can be the first superhero viewing for Valentine's Day. We don't know how it's going to end, but maybe. We have a Christmas one in Iron Man 3. Reportedly, there's a Spider-Man 3 Santa hat snow setting in New York. After all, right? Who knows what we're going to have? But that could be Marvel's version of a love movie. Time will tell. But share with me those things on Twitter, what you're watching and get through. I'm throwing advice at you and ideas like crazy. Send me your ideas. What do you guys have for you? Hopefully, the best takes will be mentioned in the hopefully kicking off soon Knick-Knack Movies Mailbag segment. Well, I hope this episode and overall message of things helps you in some small way. We will get through this, and, you are not alone. Remember that. And if you're looking for a virtual date to super not be alone, you know where to find me. Cheers. And as always, until next time, cinephiles. Are you not entertained? I think this is going to be the beginning of a beautiful friendship. I don't like goodbyes. Let's just call this see you later, alligator.